All right, this afternoon we have a unique opportunity to speak to people who have been peripherally involved with the movie we saw last week, Misrepresentation. I know a lot of you have brought your worksheets and you have your questions ready, but I want you to listen to our guests, please. Mrs. Osteler has been kind enough to help coordinate the technology, and I'm going to let her introduce our alum, and we'll get started.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi girls, welcome. I'm so happy you all got to see Misrepresentation. I've seen it and I thought it was just amazing and provocative and just so timely for young women and all women. Today we are so fortunate to have Eva Price with us. Eva Price is an alumna of Flint Ridge Sacred Heart Academy, and she brought Misrepresentation to my attention, and I brought it to Rosemary's, and she brought it to yours. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Eva via Skype.
Hi, Carl. So nice to meet you, and it's just a great pleasure to see you, and congratulations on your senior year. I know you guys have worked hard, and just appreciate the time you've taken to see Misrepresentation. And so quickly, I'm going to tell you just a couple things. One, thank you also to Mrs. Osteler and Mrs. Johnston and Sister Carolyn, everyone. So it's just so great to have this opportunity. But two things. One, when I saw the film, I immediately thought, thank goodness I went to Sacred Heart, that I went to an all-girls high school, and that I was raised where women of diversity, of great talent, different, skill sets, was just the norm. And that was one of my first responses to the film. And then also my mom. I have an incredible mother who's accomplished, successful, and very loving. And so just the multifaceted ways we have of women, and that was normal for me, and I feel like it's probably normal for you. So that was probably my initial response. And then also was to get involved, and I think that there are a lot of young women who don't have the opportunity that we have had, that you are now having, that I had, to have that as more the norm. And so what I decided to do was, there was a group up here in Northern California who wanted to get the film into the public schools in the state of California because there's not a lot of money. We raised enough, and we've already raised enough money so that 1/3 of the public schools in the state of California get to see Misrepresentation and get the curriculum. And I just think it's about building awareness and the ability to communicate in ways that are multidimensional, or looking at women in a multidimensional way. So those were some of my responses, but I just wanted to say thank you. I'm so glad you guys saw it, and would love to hear what you guys think. So I'm gonna sit in and listen to the rest of the session. But now I'll introduce both Tracy and Kelly. And Tracy is a longtime girlfriend of mine. I've known her since right out of college. She went to UCLA, went to USC, and she's had her career in the media. She was, or has been, the Travel Channel's host, and she was a host on a TV morning show up here in the Bay Area. And so her career's been in the media, and she's also sits on the advisory board for Common Sense Media, which Kelly is the Education Content Associate at Common Sense Media. And Common Sense Media is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that deals with education, children, and the media and media technology. So with further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Tracy. Tracy will speak first, and then Kelly. And thank you again. It's a pleasure seeing you all.
Thank you, Eva. I'm Tracy Gallagher-Krikorian. Very happy to be here. I did not go to an all-girls school, but looking around, it seems like a really special environment, so you all are really lucky. And that you turned out some good alums, so. Misrepresentation really struck a chord with me, and so I'm here because of that, and because I have a daughter. I never want to experience thinking that her only value is in her youth, her beauty, or her sexuality. And I wouldn't want young girls like you to think that either, because you have so much more to offer, even though those are the messages that we hear so often in the media and behind the scenes too. And because I work behind the scenes, I want to share some of those bad examples to prepare you for real life and to kind of wake you up to what in the past has happened, but also I want to share some wonderful examples of how we can move forward and overcome some of those stereotypes and values that people judge women on a lot of the time. When I was in the news business, I worked at a station in San Francisco, and the number one complaint about or the number one, not even complaint, comment we got about the newscast was about the anchor woman's hair. So I realize it's a visual medium and there is a lot of attention paid on how one looks, and understandably, but I always thought that it was one-sided. There was a lot more attention paid to a woman's looks in the business rather than the male anchor. You never heard about how their hair looked or what they were wearing. It really wasn't. There wasn't much talk about it. When I moved from producer to reporter, the news director called me in, and I thought she was going to talk to me about how to stack the stories when I was anchoring, or some techniques to good writing. But no, another woman said, "What are we going to do with your hair?" So I've experienced judgments based on my appearance. A general manager at a news station called me into his office and shut the door and told me he loved me. No former events leading up to this, mind you. I was a young 22-year-old, and I looked at him and thought, I don't know what he's expecting, but I told him I was going to work for whatever gains I achieved in this TV station. This is my favorite story of all. Looking for a new agent. I had heard that a college sorority sister of mine was a very successful TV agent, and someone suggested I call her. So I sent her my tape, and then I followed up with a call. And the response was, "Oh, hey, I haven't had a chance to look at your videotape, but I know you're my age, and I hear your kids screaming in the background. So I need to tell you that we're only interested in finding young girls who look hot in bikinis." So after that, luckily I had good values, and I was raised by a mother who put a lot of emphasis on intelligent thought and being independent, and luckily I could laugh that one off and all of these encounters off, because I believe that with hard work and virtuous actions and strong skills, you could get ahead. Luckily, I did find that out, because I have had some wonderful examples in the workplace, in the media, that I want to share with you, because this is kind of what set my foundation for going forward. I had a boss at the Travel Channel who kept me on the air, despite being pregnant 3 times, which, as you know, changes a woman's appearance and de-emphasizes her sexuality, which, as you know, in the media, there's a lot of emphasis on that, and I have always thanked him tremendously for that. I know you may not think this sounds like a big deal, but it is a big deal when you enter the stage in your life when you're thinking about having a child and working. I have a woman producer who I worked with for many years, who always hired women and made it a point to allow them to work from home, to be with their children if they needed to. She tried to help them get ahead because she knew how much harder it is for women sometimes. She appreciated smart dialogue, and women in her presence were encouraged to have strong voices, whereas sometimes women who speak out can be considered too pushy or be a diva. My closing thoughts is that I would like you to remember her spirit, this producer who encouraged and fostered women and put a lot of emphasis on smart dialogue and critical thinking, because in order to overcome stereotypes, in order to overcome shallow values placed on women, we women have to stick together. We need to vote. We need to mentor other women. We need to look to other women to be mentored by which to be mentored. We need to emphasize smart ideas and encourage other women to speak out. Now, along those lines, I want to point out, I think that misrepresentation was a fabulous job, and to be another supportive woman, I applaud Jennifer Newsom-Siebel for doing it. But also to share some smart intellectual thought, I thought there was one thing missing from the film, and that is there's a lot of emphasis on why there are not a lot of women in power as CEOs or as congresswomen, and I think that she left out the fact that a lot of women choose to have children, and it's a huge sacrifice. It's a huge family sacrifice to take on any of those positions of power. And I applaud the women who do, but I don't think that there is a, any kind of structure or support in a lot of those positions for women to juggle both. So looking forward, I think that we as you young women entering the workforce, we need to look at policy that needs to change to make it easier for you to be successful and also balance a family if you'd like. Children of our country will be better for it, and women will show up in more positions of power. Even the President of the United States, which maybe any one of you in this audience could be. And don't forget that. So I wish you all the best, and I appreciate your time, and hopefully you got a lot out of the film. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly. Thanks so much for having me here. This is kind of a flashback for me because the first time that I saw misrepresentation, I was at my high school. It was a screening at my high school, an all-girls school named Castellia at Stanford, and we had the exact same uniforms as you guys did. I mean, front row, like navy blue polo, white skirt, blue skirt, everything. So it's a big flashback for me, which I love. As Eva mentioned, my role on the education content team at Common Sense Media is to take the latest and greatest research on youth culture and media, and then to transform it into fun and cutting-edge educational resources for families and schools. And the relationship between gender and media has always been a huge passion of mine. So when Jen Sibyl-Newsome, the film's director, and her team at Misrepresentation came to us and asked for us to help develop co-branded family discussion guides with them, I was thrilled. I was so excited. And not only did I want to highlight the incredible content of the film, but I also had a personal goal in mind, which was to bring social media into the picture. So I want to do a little poll. I'm curious, how many of us have Facebook? Okay. All right, great. I mean, most everyone. How many of you would say, by show of hands, that boys and girls experience photo posting and photo commenting differently online? Most? Okay, interesting. Well, so this past summer, Common Sense Media conducted a national survey of teens across the country about the way that they use social media. And we found that 45% of girls worry that other people might post ugly photos of them online, compared to only 24% of boys. And 28% of girls said that they at some point had edited their photos before posting them online, compared to only 9% of boys. So for today's kids and teens and young adults like myself, the media doesn't just mean TV shows and films and advertisements, right? It's also the media that we create every day. Everything that we tweet, everything that we post, every image, every video. And that's something that's not really talked about these days, and it wasn't even talked about in the film. So, a story. 2 years ago, when I was a senior in college, I decided to write my thesis about Facebook and teen girls' experiences with photo posting and photos. And so I interviewed teen girls your age in the Bay Area, and then also back in New England where I was studying. And so the girls led me on tours of their Facebook profiles, kind of showing me all their profile pictures and their photos, and they talked to me about everything, kind of the whole inside scoop. They told me what made a profile picture worthy material, right? They told me what it feels like to untag a photo, or what it feels like to tag photos of your friends, all the rituals involved in all of that. And as a college student, Facebook was completely familiar to me. I had an account since I was, a high school junior. But there was something about seeing Facebook through the eyes of girls your age, again, that really shed light on new issues that I hadn't even thought about before. So you see, this is my main point. I believe that we belong to a generation of women who, for the first time, are growing up with mirrors that talk back to us. Okay, we not only use sites like Facebook to put our best image forward, but we also receive tons of comments from our friends and our girlfriends about how cute we are, how pretty we are, how hot we are, right? Then don't get me wrong, I love taking photos. I love posting photos online, and then when I upload a new profile picture, I kind of expect that someone's going to like it or leave a comment, right? I hope so. But what concerns me, though, are those times when I hear my friends asking to retake photos when we're out, together at birthday parties, or when I see them deleting photos from each other's phones because they're worried that it's going to be posted online. I'm concerned about the interview. I had one interview with a girl who showed me the really harsh sexual photo comments that she received from boys at her schools that were clearly trying to cyberbully her. I had another interview with a girl who she admitted that she would ask her friends sometimes to break the ice and leave comments on her profile pictures just in hopes that other people might do the same. And I'm also concerned by the degrading and sexist comments that I see in the comment section of YouTube, where you see videos of girls who are just trying to show the world that they can carry a tune and that they can sing, and yet they're being degraded and demoralized. So to close, in Misrepresentation, Katie Couric said, "The media can be an instrument of change. It depends on who's piloting the plane." And I completely agree with her. And in many ways, we are piloting the plane every day, with every tweet, with every text, with every blog post, every video and image that we post and share with our friends. It's a matter of finding the balance between those Kodak moments in our lives and feeling pressure to be camera ready all the time. It's a balance between not wanting to look our best, but also not criticizing ourselves and others when we do and we don't, online or offline. We might not be able to swiftly change celebrity culture or the entertainment media industry at large, overnight, even though we should try, but we can certainly take charge of the media culture in our own lives with our friends online on a daily basis.
Question time?
Hey, ladies, I know some of you brought your video analysis with you, and those questions are primarily directed at the movie itself. But because our two guests are young adults as well, in areas that some of you are doing your projects, and also I know career-wise where some of you are directed, I'd like to just open it to questions or even comments about the movie that you feel resonate with their stories. We don't have a lot of time because I know a lot of you need to leave, but feel free to go ahead. I know you're really shy. Let's give it a try. Yes.
Okay, so where do you draw the line between taking something in stride when you know better or like taking a stand, Because both.
That's a good question. I think it really depends on the context and the environment. If it's a supportive environment where you feel comfortable actually voicing your opinion and making a difference, I think you definitely should. I admit there's some situations where maybe you're new, maybe you're just feeling out the environment. Maybe it's better for you at that point to just never compromise your morals or values or your beliefs. But if you don't feel quite ready to object to something yet, you have to do what's best for you. But I think that people will respect you if you do voice it in a way where you're getting your words, your thoughts heard, and yet you're not offending anyone else. Because workplace dialogue and interactions can be tricky. So it's sort of up to you to feel it out. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah,
Always, if you feel better pulling someone's side in private, a boss or a coworker, if it's in a group situation, pull someone's side in private and state your views. Never, no one's going to put you down unless it's terribly offensive or rude. I don't think you do that.
I was just wondering, I feel like a lot of women have seen this video, but have a lot of men seen it? And if they have, I'm just wondering what were like the different reactions you got. Were there a lot of like, wow, I didn't really think about this when I saw that newscaster say that? Or was it more like, why are you making this video type situation?
The only times that I've seen this film were actually at different all-girls schools, which has been very interesting. But at Common Sense Media, so our CEO, Jim Steyer, was in the film. He was the guy in the yellow shirt who was interviewed a couple times. And actually, Jen's making a film on masculinity right now. He's being interviewed today for the next chapter of his book. I would say that I have heard from Jen and from the Misrepresentation team that it is important for men to pay attention and listen to the messages here, and that it's a different kind of message for them, right? I heard from her that a lot of fathers were really into this and concerned, and they're concerned about their girls and their nieces and their friends' daughters as well. But as you know, I believe that the conversation has to shift a little bit. It's hard to talk to men in some ways are in this kind of position of power, right? So you have to kind of talk at a different angle that's not only empathetic but logical too at the same time about girls' issues and why they should care and different things. So it's kind of a touchy thing.
I noticed that there was like quite a few men interviewed in the movie. Were you shocked to hear their responses and opinions? Because I know that I feel like for women it makes sense. Women should all be empowered, blah blah blah. But I thought thought it was like, oh, really surprising that even the men in the interview felt that way too.
Well, I think all the men have mothers or maybe sisters or even daughters to relate to, because I think my husband saw it, and I know it made him think differently, and he's a sensitive guy. Oh, he's a sensitive guy. So I think that when, the way that men can relate to how women are treated, how women feel, is to personalize it with them and make them think of how would you like it if your mother were looked at that way, or your sister, or your daughter. I mean, I've noticed my husband talks differently to my sons even, instead of saying, oh, well, did you think she's a cute girl? I look at him, I mean, isn't she nice and smart? You know, because it's just been part of our culture. The one thing I would say, I would have loved her to have gone and interviewed Rush Limbaugh and Chris Matthews and all of those just scumball newscasters who were, oops, I just did it, were putting down women of power and achievement, saying they looked like a dog. I mean, Hillary Clinton looks like a dog. I mean, really? After all she's done and sacrificed? I just would have loved to put one of them on, all of them on the spot.
Being a woman in the media industry, if they had come to you and asked to interview you for this project, would you have said yes? Because I know that like it must be kind of hard to do that, because you're kind of taking a stand against the industry, and it can be kind of like career suicide to do that. So
it's a really good question. No, I wouldn't have had a problem. Not at all. But I also have been in the business 20 years, so I feel a little more confident. And I feel like I've made connections who would respect my opinion. I would never mention names. But I would, you know, use examples just to paint a clear picture of what it can be like out there.
Oh, have you, like, I know you said that people, like, try to get you to change your appearance. Did you ever, like, get so pressured that you did end up, like, altering something about yourself and, like, regretted it or anything?
Nothing major, but I definitely sacrificed part of my own style.
Yeah.
You know, I tried a million different haircuts, short haircuts with my hair. I didn't like it. I admit I was more conscientious of what I had to wear, because I was trying to fit into that little like news box.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything dramatic where I felt ashamed of myself. It was just trying to fit into my corporate environment. But once I moved over to the Travel Channel, where it wasn't so news oriented and it was a little less casual, I got back to my own groove. So it's not, believe me, I would much rather, you know, wake up in my jammies and do radio, but it's not as exciting because you're not out somewhere, you know, out and about. So it's, you know, there are little sacrifices you have to make for, you know, what you want to do, but overall it was nothing that I regret.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, I was just gonna, this kind of connected to her question. I don't know how you did the casting for this video or got who specifically you were gonna interview, but did you, in like the casting process and everything, did you find that there were a lot of women of power that said, no, I'm not gonna, kind of like the career suicide thing, like even if you would do it, were there a lot of people that said, no, I'm not gonna get on screen to say that because I don't wanna sacrifice my job?
For the foreign dressing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you meant for
or
misrepresentation.
either. I mean, it doesn't really, either or.
I mean, if we want to, I can't speak towards misrepresentation. I don't know how she did the casting.
Okay. That was our question.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if anybody did say no. It's a really good question.
Okay.
Oh, I was just curious to see who, in your opinion, grows up like at a bigger disadvantage, like women because they're so like subjected by media and like forced to, you know, like look at their bodies, or like men because they kind of grow up in a society where they're like emotionally like crippled and aren't able to express how they like really feel, and when they do, it's like people call them like gay or, you know, maybe like, who do you think is more at a disadvantage?
Go ahead.
I think, I don't think I can say either or. I think you raised an excellent point. I mean, you talked about something that boys can't really talk about. It's the whole, part about being masculine, being masculine in this culture is that you have to be, covertly probably emotional, and you have feelings and you may want to talk about them, but you can't, right? So personally, I mean, I love talking to my girlfriends. I love having conversations and talking things out, but at the same time, as much as things have progressed for women, I still think that we are still at a disadvantage, definitely. I mean, I remember in high school when my high school boyfriend said that to me, he said, everything's okay for girls now, everything's fine. And I was like, no, it's not, and the fact that people think, like boys my age still think that, that's kind of challenging and troubling to me. So I think that there's stuff on either side.
Well, I think men, not all men, not the good men, I think they can also use that as a form of power by falling back on criticizing a woman's looks or criticizing, like Rush Limbaugh, she's a dog, because that's traditionally been a weak spot for women, and we just have to stick together and stand up and show our worth in other ways so it won't be tolerated.
So the film presented a very deep issue that's wrong with our society and specifically media, but as you two women that worked in the industry, what sort of things can we as teenagers, specifically the ones that want to work in the industry, do to help change this?
My examples were support each other, be a team together, don't put emphasis on how you look, don't, emphasize that, you're worried about how you look in the workplace, support other women's strong ideas, look for other girls to mentor or to be mentored by other women. It just takes a little bit of change in a small environment to, if something drastic happens, there are, legal avenues you can take to change things, but hopefully, I think by this film and other things going on in society, people are more aware of this objectification of women. I think it was discussed in the film, or just things you can do also to feel better about yourself is don't read People magazine, don't support those trashy mags that emphasize how women look and how much weight so-and-so's gained and the skimpy clothes. Don't put money in their pocket by buying those magazines. So you're affecting those corporations that do support it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's so many things you can do on a daily basis, as I talked about, like with our own media that we create for each other, but also, at large. I think that in some ways it's hard to resist those guilty pleasures. I for one love watching Real Housewives of New Jersey, but I watch it through an anthropological lens, right? So I'm like, I'm thinking critically about what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing that these aren't like role models that I want my daughters to grow up to be, and in some ways that's kind of the thought process that we have to have with all media, whether it's a profile picture that we create or whether it's a TV show. I would say that, in general, so I've been out of college for about 1.5 years now and working in the real world, as they say. I have learned so much from my colleagues, many of whom are women, and just the way that they present themselves and they carry themselves in board meetings, in the office, and everything is just such a huge daily inspiration for me. So I think that as we grow older, you can learn from each other, you can learn from your teachers. So much of what I learned comes from my alma mater, my high school. Our motto is women learning, women leading, so I kind of carry it with me all the time. And so those little things every day.
Ladies, I know we're kind of at time. Cindy, I know you have a question. So what I'm going to do, Tris and Kelly said that they would stay for a few minutes afterwards. I know some of you have practice and have to leave. So